Hello there, very good evening and welcome to the news tonight here on Rajya TV, where we get you through the day's top stories from India and across the world. I'm Tracy Shilshi and here are the headlines. The RBI cuts interest rate by 50 basis points to 6.75%. Home and auto loans expected to become cheaper as SBI and Andhra Bank follow suit. Sensex too gains 160 points as markets celebrate. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wraps up his 5-day visit to the US, says it demonstrates extraordinary depth and diversity of the relationship. A case is registered against BJP leader Sushil Modi for allegedly offering freebies to voters in Bihar. FIR also against Lalu Prasad as well for his caste remark in a rally. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he can consider joining coalition forces against the Islamic State, but insists that Syrian President Assad will remain. And Shashank Manohar is likely to get a second innings as BCCI chairman when the board meets to elect Dalmia's successor on the 4th of October. Srinivasan is barred from attending the meet but allowed to vote. Our top story, as was being predicted, the Reserve Bank of India today cut interest rates, but the big surprise came when the rates were slashed to a 4-year low. This marks the 4th repo rate cut this year. RBI Chief Raghuram Rajan said that now the focus should be to shifting and bringing inflation down to 5% by the end of next financial year. However, he did revise the GDP growth target to 7.4%, which the government said needs a reassessment.
With the inflation at record low in the past few months and growing pressure from the government as well as the industry, a rate cut by the RBI was expected on Tuesday. But none expected it to be as big as this. For the 4th time this year, the central bank has reduced the repo rate by 50 basis points to a 4.5-year low of 6.75%. The cash reserve ratio was also kept stable at 4% as the reverse repo rate fell to 5.75%.
The Reserve Bank intends to be accommodative to the extent possible, given its inflation goals, while recognizing that continuing government policy implementation, structural reforms, and corporate actions leading to higher productivity will be the primary impetus for sustainable growth.
RBI justified the rate cut, saying the consumer inflation remained below the 6% target for January next year. The centre welcomed the move but said it would reassess the GDP target after RBI revised it to 7.4%.
This decision of the RBI will significantly provide policy support to the real economy and help in the recovery process. We are looking forward now to the transmission of these cuts which will effectively help to boost confidence and investment.
RBI has now put the onus on the banks and the centre to ensure the benefits are passed on to customers as soon as possible. Once the banks reduce lending rates, EMIs are set to go down. Within minutes of the RBI policy announcement, SBI reduced its lending rate by 0.40% to 9.3%. Andhra Bank also cut its lending rates by 0.25%. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
And recovering from early losses, the Sensex surged over 750 points from the session's low. The surge came soon after RBI reduced those rates today. Sensex was down by 300 points during intraday trade, but ended the day with a gain of over 160 points. And Nifty also regaining that 7,800 mark by rising over 40 points. Well, markets in a celebratory mode as if to be welcoming back Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who of course concluded his US visit today, thanking the American public for the warm welcome accorded to him and his delegates. Modi also said that a lot of ground had been covered during this trip. In a series of meetings, the Prime Minister met several world leaders, including the US President. India also hosted the G4 summit, where the leaders pushed for UN reforms. Take a look.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi summed up his US trip in a series of tweets Tuesday morning, saying that the visit shows the extraordinary depth and diversity of the bilateral relationship Modi said a lot of ground had been covered in the last few days. The Prime Minister also thanked the American people for their hospitality and the huge welcome accorded to him and his delegates everywhere they went. The Prime Minister left for Delhi on Tuesday morning. He made a brief stopover in Frankfurt before flying on to the national capital. On the last day, Modi addressed the UN Peacekeeping Summit. Here, he once again made a strong pitch for UN Security Council reforms.
We must complement the long-pending task of reforms within a fixed time frame of the UN Security Council to preserve the relevance and effectiveness of UN.
Increased support to India's cause for UN reforms was one of the biggest takeaways of this visit. There was also a spotlight on climate change and the issue of terrorism.
Trends in demography, urbanization, and migrations are posing new challenges. Climate change and terrorism are new concerns. Cyber and space are entirely new frontiers of our opportunities and challenges.
On the last day of his visit, the Prime Minister also met US President Barack Obama. The two leaders discussed progress in Indo-US strategic ties.
We discussed how we can further refine our strategic vision, our common joint vision, moving forward for security and partnerships. And that encompasses everything from scientific exchanges and educational exchanges to security cooperation.
The Prime Minister also met British Prime Minister David Cameron and French President François Hollande, besides meeting other world leaders. Some of his other big engagements included CEOs of top companies. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, taking a look at that entire US trip, we've got Shubhajit Roy, who's the assistant editor at the Indian Express, joining us on the phone line from the capital. Shubhajit, what, according to you, would be the biggest highlight of this visit?
Well, Tracy, this particular visit, because it is the second visit by the Prime Minister, and this is the fifth meeting of his with U.S. President Barack Obama, this particular visit puts Indo-U.S. relations at a much higher trajectory than we had probably thought of when this new government came to power. Having said that, this particular visit has covered aspects ranging from business, from technology, to UN Security Council reforms, as well as UN peacekeeping forces that India is part of. So, in that sense, it's a very, very well-rounded visit, and not to forget the climate change agenda that was the key takeaway from the meeting between Prime Minister Modi and U.S. President Barack Obama.
And, as you're talking about all the areas that he covered during his visit this time around, one, of course, being his visit at the Silicon Valley, Modi's dream really of making India the tech destination, could come true, considering the fact that it was quite a stark contrast to the kind of visit that the Chinese president had. You had these tech CEOs who went to meet him. But, it was not that kind of a bonhomie that you perhaps saw with Modi and, of course, Mark Zuckerberg and what he eventually achieved in Silicon Valley.
His visit to Silicon Valley was a very, very, wise move by the Indian side, because Silicon Valley represents American innovation and Indian technological expertise. So it is the best of both worlds. And because the Indian Prime Minister reached out to Silicon Valley personally and engaged with, the top companies there, which are coincidentally being headed by Indian origin people from Google to Adobe to Microsoft. So that, in that sense, it helped in making a pitch for the Digital India campaign, which is leading from the front. So, in that sense, it was a win-win situation for the Indian side. In case of China, you have to remember the U.S. government and is facing a trust deficit with the Chinese when it comes to digital media or intellectual property rights because of cyber security threats emanating from Chinese soil. So there is a trust deficit, whereas in case of India, it is much more a trustworthy relationship between the two sides, as well as it relies on Indian talent a lot more.
Yes.
So in that sense, it's a much more mutually beneficial situation in case of Indo-US relationship on the digital side and the technical side.
All right. Shubhajit Roy, thanks so much for joining us on this story. Of course, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's entire team, of course, will be arriving much later tonight. And as he comes in, he's, of course, going to be getting into that wheel of national politics, which, of course, on the forefront is Bihar. And an FIR was lodged in Bihar today against senior BJP leader Sushil Kumar Modi, lodged under the Representation of the People's Act. It says that Sushil Modi violated the Model Code of Conduct by assuring voters freebies, a charge that the leader has denied.
Senior BJP leader Sushil Kumar Modi caught on the wrong side of the Model Code of Conduct. Addressing an election rally on Monday, the BJP leader allegedly promised to give away laptops, color TVs and dhotis and saris to voters. Talking to reporters in Patna, Sushil Modi challenged the FIR and urged an election commission inquiry.
बिहार के अंदर 50,000 लड़के लड़कियों को हम लैपटॉप देंगे, इसमें क्या गुनाह किया है? हमने कहा है कि हमारी सरकार बनेगी तो हर एक गरीब परिवार को धोती साड़ी खरीदने के लिए पैसा दिया जाएगा। ये तो हमारा अधिकार है। हम चुनाव जीतने के बाद क्या करेंगे मतदाताओं को बताने का हमारा अधिकार है। घोषणा पत्र में क्या चीज शामिल है नहीं शामिल इसका ऐसे कोई संबंध नहीं है और घोषणा पत्र उचित समय पर जारी किया जाएगा। रोज नीतीश जी रोज नई नई घोषणा कर रहे हैं, उन पर FIR नहीं हुआ, लेकिन मेरे पर FIR हो गया।
Sushil Modi reportedly made the remarks during an election meeting in favor of BJP candidate Anand Bhushan Pandey. The Camu district police said they filed the FIR on the basis of video footage of the rally.
भाजपा के पास एक ही चीज है, वो है धनबल, अकूत धनबल, जो उनके क्रोनी कैपिटलिस्ट फ्रेंड्स प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं और सुशील मोदी जी कॉम्प्राडोर हैं, वो इसको पहुंचाने का कार्य कर रहे हैं।
Elections in Bhabua, where Sushil Modi allegedly made the remarks, will be held in the second phase on 19th of October. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, the Election Commission has ordered an FIR against RJD President Lalu Prasad for his caste remark at a rally on Sunday. But unfazed by the EC warning, Lalu has once again vowed to continue his fight for the backward castes. In fact, his remark has triggered, of course, a war of words among rival political parties.
रहेगा या नहीं रहेगा, जनवंशियों, सावधान, सारा चढ़ाई आपके ऊपर है। समझ रहा कि जो बेवकूफ है इनको छितराओ, जनवंशियों को, पिछड़ों को बोलता है कि भाई वोट अन्य हो जाएगा।
On Sunday, RJD President Lalu Prasad triggered a fresh war of words over caste-based reservation. Kicking off his younger son Tejasvi Yadav's election campaign from Raghopur Assembly constituency, Lalu gave a clarion call to all members of Yadav caste and OBCs to rally behind the secular alliance. The Election Commission has ordered an FIR against the RJD chief for the remarks.
श्री लालू प्रसाद जी के जो राघोपुर में उन्होंने एक पब्लिक स्पीच में जिन चीज़ों पर उन्होंने बोला है, तो उसके जिला निर्वाचन पदाधिकारी वैशाली ने समीक्षा उठाई। उसमें कुछ आईपीसी के प्रोविजंस और आरपी एक्ट के प्रोविजंस का और मॉडल कोड के वायलेशंस पाया है और उसके आधार पर उनके विरुद्ध प्राथमिकी दर्ज किया गया है।
But Lalu is unfazed by the warning. On Tuesday, he vowed to continue his fight for the backward castes and triggered a fresh war of words. And it comes despite BJP's clarification on its stand on the reservation issue.
आरएसएस हमारा आरक्षण खत्म करना चाह रही है। वो जातीय मीटिंग करता, सब जगह वो लोग करता। ये कौन होते हैं मोहन भागवत बीजेपी खत्म करने वाला? लालू यादव और हमारी पार्टी मुझे फांसी पर भी चढ़ा दोगे तो लालू यादव अपना आवाज बंद करने वाला नहीं है गरीबों का।
मुझे ये नहीं समझ में आ रहा है कि सब लोग लालू यादव के पीछे हाथ धो के क्यों पड़ गए। कल सुशील मोदी जी का भाषण नहीं सुना आपने? जहां उन्होंने कहा कि तेली बनी है अरवल छोड़ के भाग गए, जहां प्रधानमंत्री खुद कहते हैं कि ओबीसी का अकेला बच्चा मैं हूं।
भाजपा आरक्षण पर बिल्कुल समर्पित है। जो एससी हैं, जो एसटी हैं, जो पिछड़े हैं, वो अति पिछड़े हैं, उनके संवैधानिक आरक्षण उनके आर्थिक सामाजिक विकास के लिए जरूरी है। लालू जी के पास कोई मुद्दा नहीं बचा है।
The rhetoric on reservation was triggered last week by RSS chief Mohan Bhagwat's suggestion to review the policy on reservation. Coming ahead of the polls, the RJD-JDU combined criticized the remark. The alliance is now focused to keep its vote bank intact, which has large share of backward caste voters. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Up next, we're getting international news, and Russia is considering joining the anti-Islamic State coalition to launch airstrikes after Putin holds talks with Obama.
Another star turn by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi at Silicon Valley. How will India benefit? Watch the big picture with Gautam Adhikari from Washington DC at 9:30 p.m. on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. Let's get you some more national news now. In FTII students who had called off their 18-day hunger strike after the government agreed to come to the negotiating table, held a meeting with officials of the INB ministry today. The agitating students have two main demands, namely the dissolution of the present FTII society and simultaneously setting up a new search committee through a transparent process. This committee will look into the appointments of the chairperson, members and other staff. As the deadlock continues, the ministry officials will also have another round of talks with the students on the 1st of October.
गवर्नमेंट ने कोई आश्वासन नहीं दिया है, ना तो स्टूडेंट्स ने कोई आश्वासन दिया है। हमारी बातचीत अभी भी जारी है, बातचीत कंप्लीट नहीं हुई है और कोई निर्णय भी नहीं आया है अभी तक। सो द स्ट्राइक इज स्टिल ऑन और स्ट्राइक जारी है, पर 1 अक्टूबर को वापस हम मिलेंगे और इस बारे में कंटिन्यू करेंगे।
And now let's get you some more updates from across the country and nationwide. 3 immediate support vessels have been inducted into the Indian Navy. The 3 ISV vessels have been commissioned off the naval dockyard in Mumbai. The vessels, which can patrol for around 5 days at a stretch to protect offshore development areas like Mumbai High, the Panna Mukta oil fields and the Tapti gas field. The Supreme Court today dismissed the petition of Anshuman Ruiya and Ravi Ruiya of the SR Group, saying that they will have to face trial in the 2G case. The Ruiyas had argued that they were charged with cheating and conspiracy and not under the Prevention of Corruption Act, so they cannot be tried by the special court hearing the 2G spectrum case. However, the CBI opposed this, saying that a retrial cannot be ordered when the case is almost coming to an end. Aam Aadmi Party MLA Somnath Bharti has been sent to 2 days police custody after he was arrested in New Delhi on Monday in connection with a domestic violence case filed by his wife. Bharti had evaded arrest for nearly a week. After the Supreme Court's direction, he surrendered at the Dwarka police station in Delhi on Monday night. All right, international news now. In a day after the UNGA debate, Russian President Vladimir Putin is considering whether to join the US and its allies in their fight against the Islamic State. His comments came after a meeting with the US President Barack Obama on the sidelines of the UN summit. However, a split is evident over the fate of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and how to end the Syrian conflict, which is also one of the reasons for the rise of the Islamic State.
Attempting to break the ice.
The dividends will be great.
The US and Russian presidents sharing a toast at the UN, trading frosty looks. Differences over Syria are obvious. In his firebrand speech at the UNGA on Monday, Obama called the Syrian President Assad a tyrant and the chief culprit. Putin, on the other hand, proposed a coup against the US global leadership, seeking to dislodge control from the US-led coalition battling IS.
Очень надеюсь, что нам удастся найти точки соприкосновения со всеми нашими партнерами, с арабскими странами, с Турцией, с Соединенными Штатами Америки. Отнимет тоже со всеми заинтересованными странами, развивая процесс политических преобразований в регионах и сильных обществ.
The United States is prepared to work with any nation, including Russia and Iran, to resolve the conflict. We must recognize that there cannot be, after so much bloodshed, so much carnage, a return to the pre-war status quo.
After an elaborate meeting with the US President, Putin said Russia is pondering what more it could do to support the Syrian government and Kurdish forces fighting the Islamic State militants, reiterating his stand that there is no alternative to cooperating with Assad's military to fight against IS.
На территории этой страны в частности. Что же касается нашего российского участия в этой работе, то мы думаем на тему о том, что мы могли бы сделать дополнительно для того, чтобы поддержать тех, кто реально в поле.
Vladimir Putin also held talks with Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi on the sidelines of UNGA. The Islamic State threat was the focus. Earlier, Russia offered Iraq military and other aid to push back the Islamic State militants, which is also a concern for Washington. Despite war of words, Putin assured the UN chief that they would conduct airstrikes only after approval from the United Nations. He also ruled out Russian troops taking part in the ground operation in Syria. However, the situation is tense on the diplomatic front as both US and France insisted that Assad must go. Putin is stern, as he says they are not citizens of Syria, so they should stay away from choosing its leadership. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Afghan forces have launched a major assault against the Taliban in a bid to retake the city of Kunduz. The city was seized by Taliban forces on Monday. Afghanistan's defense ministry has said that government troops will soon take over Kunduz with the US help. The US military is carrying out airstrikes on Taliban positions on the outskirts of the city. A day earlier, the Taliban battled their way into the city of Kunduz and freed hundreds of fellow militants from its jail. Afghan officials said that it was one of the most serious security breaches in the last 14 years. Meanwhile, on the ground, Kabul residents pointed fingers at neighboring Pakistan for the attack. Significantly, the attack comes as President Ashraf Ghani completes a year in office. Kunduz is the first provincial capital seized by the Taliban since they lost power in the US-led invasion 14 years ago. The Taliban's advance is sure to mount pressure on Ghani's unity government.
و امشب هم قماندانی قول اردوی 209 شاهین و تماما رهبری نیروهای امنیتی ولایت کندوز اونا تدابیر شدید امنیتی را اتخاذ کرده و فعلا در داخل کندوز وضعیتی که هستن اونا تحت کنترل هستن و تدابیر جدی به خاطر.
And now let's get you some more international news updates in Global Buzz. In one of the deadliest attacks on civilians in Yemen, an airstrike at a wedding ceremony left more than 130 people dead. According to locals, 2 missiles tore through tents where a man affiliated with the Houthi group was holding his wedding reception. The Saudi-led Arab coalition strongly denied any role in that airstrike. Super typhoon Dujuan made landfall in southeastern China's coastal city of Putian after lashing Taiwan and killing 2 people. Authorities ordered tens of thousands of boats back to shore and closed tourist places. Gusty winds with speeds of up to 120 kilometers an hour were also being reported. Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit Britain next month, the first state visit by a Chinese leader after former President Hu Jintao visited UK 10 years ago. Jinping's his trip, in fact, comes a week after the US Finance Minister George Osborne visited China to strengthen economic ties. Cuban President Raul Castro appealed to the United Nations General Assembly to end the US embargo. Castro said that normal relations would only be possible if Washington ends the economic, commercial and financial blockade. Cuba and the US restored relations on the 20th of July after more than half a century of animosity. All right, back home now, and in cricket news, BCCI is set to choose a new president. It has called for a special general meeting on the 4th of October to elect late President Jagmohan Dalmia's successor. Former President Shashank Manohar has emerged as the consensus candidate for the job.
BCCI will hold a special general body meeting on October 4th to elect its new president following the death of Jagmohan Dalmia. Former BCCI President Shashank Manohar is widely expected to take over as the new chief. He's unlikely to face any opposition as he enjoys the support of both the Sharad Pawar and Anurag Thakur factions, who control about 20 votes out of the 29. If elected, this will be his second term as BCCI boss after his stint from 2008 to 2011.
मैंने शशांक मनोहर जी से अनुरोध किया था कि आप आइए बीसीसीआई के अध्यक्ष पद की जिम्मेदारी लीजिए। उन्होंने उस पर सहमति जताई है और मुझे पूर्ण आशा है भारी बहुमत के साथ वो इस चुनाव को जीतेंगे।
Former board president N. Srinivasan will not be able to attend the meeting. On Tuesday, the Supreme Court rejected a BCCI plea to review its verdict on former board chief N. Srinivasan. He was also barred by the Supreme Court from contesting for the BCCI president's post on the ground of conflict of interest.
BCCI filed a review petition against the order of 22nd January passed by Supreme Court. On that order, Supreme Court finally dismissed the 6.2.4 rules of BCCI. And after that order, Srinivasan out from the BCCI.
The court's decision has barred Srinivasan from attending the meeting as the president of the Tamil Nadu Cricket Association. However, he could still cast his vote to pick Dalmia's successor. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's get you some on-field action in sports speed. India A defeated South Africa by 8 wickets in a T20 warm-up match today. South Africa posted a total of 189 for 3 thanks to JP Domini's unbeaten 68. For India, Mayank Agarwal and Manan Vora set the tone for the chase with a 119-run opening partnership. Mayank Agarwal scored a 49-ball 87 while Vora scored 56. Real Madrid striker Cristiano Ronaldo is eyeing Raul's record of 323 goals in Champions League when his side takes on the Swedish club Malmo. Ronaldo needs a hat-trick to overtake Raul and become the club's all-time leading goal scorer. The Spanish club will look to bounce back in this match after relinquishing the top spot in La Liga over the weekend. Playing her first match in nearly 3 months, Maria Sharapova retired with an arm injury in a first-round match at the Wuhan Open in China. She played 2 more games in the third set before retiring. It was Sharapova's first match since she lost to Serena Williams in Wimbledon semi-finals in July. McLaren has confirmed that Formula One racer Jenson Button will continue to be part of the team till 2016. Button's Formula One future was the subject of intense scrutiny at the Japanese Grand Prix over the weekend after suggesting that he had fallen out of love with the sport. And that's all we have for you on the news tonight. Thanks so much for joining us.